tell me today's Veterans Day. Say Happy Veterans Day to everyone.
Happy Veterans Day.
And I hear that you may sing a song. What song are you going to sing? Well, something patriotic. Maybe God Bless America.
God bless America.
God bless America. Thank you, veterans. Say thank you, veterans, for all your service.
Thank you, veterans, for all your service.
Happy Veterans Day, and I'm Billy Hart, a veteran of the United States Navy Amphibious Forces, Squadron 9. I operated between Da Nang, Vietnam, and Qua Viet, right off the South China Sea. And today we honor all veterans. And today was a very close attention to the first responders. The United States Coast Guard, always at the ready, protecting our shores, on land and sea, along with the emergency services, the New York City Police Department, and all the other law enforcement, and the New York City Fire Department. First responders. And we really, God bless America, because freedom does not come cheap. It is the 15th anniversary of what is considered in the 21st century in America, our Pearl Harbor, when we were attacked on September the 11th, 2001, by terrorists who attacked our nation and murdered thousands of people. Reminded again, freedom does not come cheap. God bless America, and happy Veterans Day. This is Billy Hart, veteran, United States Navy.
The annual Veterans Day Parade marches up Fifth Avenue here in New York City. There's over 250 groups, more than 40,000 veterans participating from all eras. This year commemorates the 15th anniversary of 9/11. And the United States Coast Guard is the military branch that is featured this year. But marching along with them will be the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. So happy Veterans Day, and thank you to everyone, to all veterans. Thank you for your service. This is Sergeant Gerald Brown from Vietnam, and he has a poem that he'd like to share with us that he's even gone to the White House with.
Okay, the name of the poem is A GI's Prayer, and I wrote this for my wife. I was wounded 3 different times in Vietnam, and I'm in the Purple Heart Hall of Honor. And it says, it was Christmas Eve night, and they called a ceasefire to our fight. The Viet Cong used this time to dig in, because tomorrow the war would start all over again. I used to pray my silent prayer, then pray to God I wasn't there, and I asked myself, how many children with guns did I kill today, and who in God's name will I have to pay? You see, they must be fighting for a cause. Children just don't go around starting wars. No, it's all the governments that starts the wars, then use their men like $2 whores. So I told myself I was fighting for the red, white, and blue, and killing all her enemies was the thing I had to do. But when the war was over and I came home, I found out I was still all alone. Nobody welcomed me home with handshakes of goodwill. They all wanted to know how many children I killed. Then they all say that they understand, but somehow they made me feel even less than a man. Well, now I'm in jail and I don't know why. I just sit and watch the time go by. It seems like forever, but one day I'll be free. And the one thing that's scary is what will become of me. You see, I've run through jungles and jumped from planes. I've been shot 3 times and blinded by pain. I've crawled in the mud and dodged bombs. I even had a friend to die in my arms. And sometimes I wonder just who I am. And thank God I have a family that gives a damn. Now, if I get to heaven, St. Peter will surely yell, "This man has served in Vietnam, so he served his time in hell." Amen.
Thank you. We're with Steve Grossman, who's the head of the 23rd Street?
Yes, the 23rd Street VA Medical Center. I'm the senior therapist in the post-traumatic stress clinic. I work with Iraq veterans, Vietnam veterans, Korean veterans, and some World War II veterans who are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. I do individual work, therapy with them, and group work too. So we're very busy these days. With the Iraq War, we're getting a lot of new veterans in from both Iraq and Afghanistan. So we're kept pretty busy these days.
How do you define post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Well, it is essentially war trauma. It is experiencing trauma, usually in combat, although it doesn't have to be combat, but usually in combat, experiencing war trauma, where your life is threatened, or you may get wounded, or even the fear factor in combat, all can contribute to post-traumatic stress disorder. So many guys and women as well come back from the combat zone with PTSD and cannot really resume their civilian life right away. They need to go for treatment. They need to go for therapy. Some even take some medications that can help with depression, anxiety, and sleep. Some of the symptoms they experience are nightmares at night, flashbacks, intrusive memories, depression. These are the kinds of symptoms that a lot of the veterans have when they are diagnosed with PTSD. But we are seeing some remarkable progress. I've been at the VA for 30 years, and I have seen myself some remarkable progress over the years. Many of the veterans I work with, many of them have resumed a life, maybe not the kind of life they would like totally, but they are having a better quality of life. They're back with their families, with their kids, with their grandchildren. They are functioning much better on a daily basis. So we're very proud of the work we're doing at the VA, and we want to continue doing this work as long as we are needed to do this work.
And how do they contact you if someone needs help? Do they go to the VA hospital? Or?
Yes, they could come to the VA hospital, register with us there. They would be triaged downstairs near the emergency room, not in the emergency room, but there's a triage area. Then they would be referred based on what their ailments are. If it's a major medical ailment, they will be referred to the medical clinic. If it's PTSD, they will be referred to the mental hygiene clinic, where I am. And then we do an evaluation, an intake evaluation, and if they're diagnosed with PTSD, we refer them to a group or individual therapy and or medication with a psychiatrist. Yes, so we are saying to all veterans who are struggling when they come back from combat, and I just want to add this actually, that we have substance abuse issues as well. Alcohol and drugs is a way that many veterans with PTSD self-medicate and treat themselves to escape the symptoms, which are very painful. So we treat these veterans for substance abuse as well, for drugs, for alcohol. So it is a multifaceted approach to treatment for PTSD, and sometimes it does take time before we see results, but we stick with it, and the veterans stick with it, and they get better. So
that's the key word.
They get better. Getting better. That's what it's all about. That's what we're dedicated to, working in the VA. Certainly it's what I am dedicated to doing, is making them better and making their lives better, you know.
Thank you, and say a shout out to all the veterans.
Yes. Well, I just want to shout out to all the veterans out there on Veterans Day. And hey, listen, guys, and gals, if you need help, assistance, don't hesitate. Come down to the VA, any VA, but we're on 23rd Street and 1st Avenue. Come on down, get some help, be part of the community at the VA. Thanks.
Thank you.
Michael, one day, Steven Grossman is the best. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be alive today. He's the best. I see him every 2 weeks. I got an appointment with him this Wednesday coming. But he is so great. I love him.
What war were you in, Vietnam?
Yes.
And what branch of the service?
Army, 101st Airborne.
And the programs helped you?
Tremendously. Tremendously, especially Steve. The other person I see, he helps me a little bit, not as much as Steve, but he prescribes the medication for the PTSD. Steve is my God.
Well, Steve is a great man, and thank you for your service. Hey, with us is Joe Graham, president of the Vietnam Veterans Association, Manhattan Chapter 126. This is Veterans Day. Tell us your thoughts on today and how the parade went. I thought it was very successful myself.
We couldn't have asked for better weather. We've had some great people on the float. We had the head of the PTSD clinic on 23rd Street, Steve Grossman, on our float, and a lot of guys that still have PTSD. They jumped in with us. It was a long and it was a good day. It was a wonderful day. The people in New York City, now that we have a new president, everybody is relaxing and waiting for him to come on board. And he's been a pro-veteran for many, many years. Donald Trump gave us $2 million in 1984 for our wall, the Vietnam Wall, Memorial Wall Plaza down at 55 Water Street. He's always stepped up for us, and we're grateful for that. And we anticipate within the veterans community that we will be treated fairly, and it's all looking good for us, and it was a great day. And thank you to everyone that has supported us and supported our veterans community. It's all about duty, honor, and country, which is the way we live our lives.
With us, Fred Gasior, Air Force, am I correct?
That's right, Air Force, 1968, 1969, Vietnam, Cam Bay, Phan Rang the Trang, on C-78 Caribous, flying all over the country, back and forth. I'm here today on Veterans Day with my brothers and my sisters. This, to me, is the most fabulous day of the year because I'm with the people that really, really, really lay down themselves and some points, unfortunately, down their lives for this country. You know, to be a veteran today is something special because we just finished a presidential election, and very truthfully, It's not the politicians that gave us the right to vote, but it's the veteran that gave us the right to vote. The protester, he didn't give us anything. They just gave us a little bit of misery. But the veterans and the veterans today guarantee the freedom and liberty throughout the world that you and I now enjoy. I tell everyone, I've told everyone today and days forward and days in back, is to thank a veteran and thank the veteran for the liberty and the freedoms that you now enjoy.
Thank you, veterans. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kristal Hart reporting from Midtown, New York City. This is Veterans Day 2016. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the show. And I want to say thank you to all of our veterans. Thank you for your service. We're at the Salmagundi Club here in New York City, and this is a Coast Guard art exhibition opening. The Coast Guard art program uses fine art as an outreach tool to educate diverse audiences about the U.S. Coast Guard. With us Karen Lowe, and this is COGAP. And could you tell our audience, first of all, what is COGAP?
COGAP is an acronym for the Coast Guard Art Program. And we are a group of volunteers from around the country that donate our time, our talent, and our art to the Coast Guard. We are the visual historians. We tell their story in fine art.
It is my great pleasure to donate the 33 paintings on view here tonight to the United States Coast Guard, and by extension, the American people. The 2017 collection of works by 29 COGAP artists spotlights several of the many missions performed by the members of the Coast Guard. The Salmagundi Club is delighted to be the sponsor of this program, which each year brings such fine art to the Coast Guard.
Admiral Charles Michel will accept the 27th collection on behalf of the Coast Guard. Admiral Michel is the 30th Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard and the second commander of the service and its Chief Operating Officer. As such, he executes the Commandant's strategic intent, manages internal organizational governance, and serves as a component acquisition executive.
What a great crowd and what enthusiasm. I just got to begin here by thanking the Salmagundi Club. Robert, Karen, thank you, and all the rest of the folks here who help us with this. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this. I couldn't imagine a more perfect venue to highlight this great Coast Guard art. I mean, look at what you're surrounded with as far as a place to view art, but also the history of this location, and it's related to the history of the Coast Guard. If you're not aware, you mentioned Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is the father of the Coast Guard, if you're not aware of that. He actually founded the Coast Guard back in 1790. One of the first congressional acts was the founding of the Revenue Cutter Service, which became the United States Coast Guard. And Alexander Hamilton drew his last breaths just a few blocks down the road here at 82 James Street after he had been shot and killed by the Vice President of the United States. If you know the rest of the story, there's a backstory on that. But very much related to the Coast Guard in this historic location. You can't ask for a better venue. And thank you for doing that. Also to the Navy League of the United States, Colonel, thank you very much. I know Coast Guards and Marines share a special bond between us. We always have. Our only Coast Guard Medal of Honor winner was Signalman First Class Douglas Monroe, who died while evacuating Marines off the beaches of Guadalcanal. So Coast Guard and Marines share a special bond, and thanks to the Navy League for supporting all this effort. So we're talking about kind of shot by the Vice President of the United States and other political things. One of the great things about being here in New York today is that I'm not in Washington, D.C. I got to share just a little bit of a story. So I was fighting budget battles all this morning. I mean, it's a real knife fight down in Washington, D.C. And sometimes you lose perspective. I mean, you're just scraping for the next dollar. I mean, it's important for the next program. What are you going to give up and stuff like that? And these alligators were all approaching my boat as I was walking out of the door trying to get onto the train so I could come up here and do this. And I kind of got those things down, and then we got word, where's my aide? There he is. It's good to have an aide, by the way. I don't recommend it. But he gets a call. He says, oh, these high-level budget people need to talk to you, Admiral, this afternoon about this, and we went back and forth trying to arrange a phone call because I didn't want to do it right in the middle of the train or in Penn Station or in the back of an Uber or wherever I was going to do this phone call. So we finally got to our hotel, arranged this phone call, and I'm talking with this high-level person about all these important budget issues. It's like, well, what are you going to give up for that many million? What are you going to do for this many million? You know, why should we do that? Why should we do this? And whatever. Anyway, we came to an agreement at the end of the conversation. I said, I'm sorry I had to take your call on the road. I'm up here in New York City. And they said, well, what are you doing up in New York City? I said, I'm actually accepting art into the Coast Guard art program that preserves our history. And that person said, well, how much is that costing us? I said, no, this is actually free to the taxpayer. Don't worry about it. And we have authority to accept this art. But I said, this is all done by volunteers. People who are passionate about their nation, who are passionate about their Coast Guard, who volunteer their time and their effort and their passion and their vision and their skills and their talents because they believe in this country and they believe in the United States Coast Guard. Now, I was on the phone call going back and forth, so I couldn't see this person's facial reaction, but I can only imagine what it was because you do lose that perspective sometimes that what's really important is this country and the people who work in this country and serve this country, and that's why this art is so important because it captures the heritage of their sacrifice and the job that they do every day, and it does it in a way that's incredibly permanent. And I'm particularly proud of this art because it not only captures what our people do and will become a part of our heritage. This art, if you're not aware, is actually shipped all around to major units in the Coast Guard, and this is displayed to all our stakeholders, all our members in the Coast Guard, so they know that the people care about them. But it's not only documenting them, it's also the artist bringing their passion, their skills. The artist comes out in each one of these, and we were part of the judges, and we were commenting earlier that the personality of the artist is captured in these works of art. So when these are accepted into the United States Coast Guard, those artists become part of the Coast Guard family. And what they capture there becomes a part of our organizational heritage and a part of our organizational ethos and part of our payback to the men and women who do those tough jobs every day. Lots of time, not for a lot of pay, because they believe in this country and they believe in their citizens and they believe in their United States Coast Guard. So without further ado, I proudly, most proudly, accept this art on behalf of the Commandant of the Coast Guard and the 40,000 men and women of the United States Coast Guard. Thanks to all the artists. Thanks to everybody who supported this event. And let's get on to the awards.
James Consor, a New York City resident, for his 2 paintings of buoy tending operations on the cutter Catherine Walker. Suzanne Corbaletta of Glen Head, New York, for a painting of a search and rescue mission. Tom Hedrick, a resident of Westtown, New York, for his painting of a maritime safety and security team guardsman. Charles Gilbert Kapsner of Little Falls, Minnesota, for his painting of ice rescue practice. Virginia, for his award for 2 drawings of Coast Guard firefighters. His award is being accepted by his daughter, Suzanne Torsolo. Ann Kulak of Oldwick, New Jersey, for her painting of vertical replenishment on the cutter Active. Karen Lowe of New York City, for her painting of crew members on the cutter Active. Steve Lush of North Andover, Mass, for his 2 paintings, one of a Jayhawk helicopter and the other of a memorial service for a deceased Coast Guardsman. Chrissy Murphy, a Lowell, Mass resident, for her portrait of the captain of the Coast Guard Academy's training vessel Eagle as it gets underway. Machinery technician, second class, Jason Newman, who is on active duty and here with us today from Port Angeles, Washington, for his painting of crew members deploying weather probes from a Coast Guard airplane in the Arctic Circle. Ken Smith of Pulaski, Virginia, for a portrait of 2 female service members aboard the cutter Emerald Isle. Smith of Philadelphia for a portrait of a maritime security response team member on patrol. Chuck Van Horn of Glen Head, New York, for his depiction of Coast Guard rescue efforts during a massive flood. And John Ward of Saranac Lake, New York, for his painting of the dramatic last flight of a Coast Guard rescue squadron. We now have the honor of announcing the recipient of this year's George Gray Award for Artistic Excellence. The award, named after COGAP's co-founder George Gray, is the program's Best in Show Award. And tonight is presented to Mr. Ken Smith.
This evening was the inaugural exhibition of COGAP Collection 2017. So tonight, these 33 paintings were donated on behalf of the artists by the president of Salmagundi Club to the Coast Guard, and they were accepted by Admiral Michel, who is the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard. It shows how valuable this is to them because this is senior leadership coming here to receive the art on behalf of the Coast Guard.
I think that there's two highlights for me. One is we got to recognize our great Coast Guard men and women who do so much for this nation every day, who sacrifice so much for our citizens to ensure their safety and security. That's highlight number one. And highlight number two is the artists. The artists who, through their own labors and all volunteer, have allowed us to recognize our Coast Guard men and women for all that they do for the American people every day. Those are the highlights of my evening.
And some of the paintings here, I guess this is sort of like the jobs that the Coast Guard does. Do you want to tell our audience what some of the jobs of the Coast Guard?
Oh boy, the Coast Guard's got lots of jobs, and that's why we have so many jobs. Sometimes it's hard to tell our story. But each one of these paintings captures a different mission of the United States Coast Guard. Whether it's search and rescue, which we're very well known for, drug interdiction, protecting the nation against terrorists or other actors who try to do harm to our citizens, protecting the marine environment, protecting the fisheries, working in the polar regions, making sure that we've got environmental protection. These are the missions of the United States Coast Guard, and every single one of these paintings captures those missions.
And I'm Kristal Hart reporting on the Coast Guard art program here in New York City. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.